Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. The title of this episode has been on my mind for a while, and I felt like now's the time for me to talk about it. My interest for this episode began when I looked at the word nowhere, and I realized with a little bit of space between the W and the H, we're now here. And my mind wondered about how nowhere and now here are the same. And how what is now here is technically nowhere. And that there's this vast unknown underneath everything we ever know as a human being. I feel there is a pattern in history that repeats itself. And it is the pattern of, in some sense, creatures moving towards the multidimensional and being reduced to the void beneath the singular. That means in this life, it's kind of a more or less situation. The ultimate less is emptiness, the ultimate more is infinity. You know, the inspiration is, what is the value of nowhere becoming now here? What is the value of us distinguishing ourselves as human beings? What is the value of us separating ourselves from our world and becoming a passenger, a traveler? There's this Sufi story. There's, in some sense, this man who's a merchant, and it's back in the day, and it's like in the deserts and whatnot. And this guy with his caravan, he goes to this town, and he starts selling his, stuff, his merchandise and whatever in the town back in the day. And he's like this businessman, and he goes and he sees these poor villagers who don't see anyone else other than who's in the town. The merchant eventually sees someone who doesn't have money but needs one of his supplies, and the merchant's like, all right, here, man. And he gives the guy, and the guy doesn't have anything for payment, but he looks at him and he says, there's this man who has the pearl. There's this man who has the pearl. And what he means by that is that there's an enlightened guy in town. And so he gives the merchant the address, and the merchant goes to the location and sees it's the most simplest, minimalist kind of house on the block. And so he knocks on the door, and the Sufi dervish opens the door. This kind of realized sage. And the sage says welcome, and there was a sort of atmosphere of hospitality, And so what happens is that the merchant goes inside, and he sits there with this liberated, so considered liberated man. And he looks at his house, and the merchant is well dressed, and he looks at the house of this kind of spiritual man, spiritual sage. And he sees that the guy's kind of like getting tea ready, and he only has a kettle, a lamp, and a mat. That's all this guy has, all the furniture he has in his house, the sage. The merchant looks at the guy and says, in some sense, the merchant looks at the sage, if I remember correctly, he says, where's your furniture, my friend? Dear sage, where's your furniture? And the sage instantly, suddenly there comes this kind of as if chaotic reflection in him, and he looks at the guy and shouts and says, where's your furniture? And the merchant looks at him, where's my furniture? He's like, buddy, I'm a traveler, I don't have furniture. Suddenly, the atmosphere of the room becomes gentle, as if Gandalf is no longer angry at Frodo. And so what happens is the Sufi says, so am I. And the man gets an insight. And the insight is the same way he saw himself a traveler in this world, his home was elsewhere. The sage was also a traveler, but he was a traveler in manifestation. He was traveling through individual consciousness. I feel that the value of now here is really the free will's orchestration. That means nowhere, all this stuff in this cosmos of us, it was kind of, we didn't plan it. Our free will emerged after. On some level, I look at human existence and I wonder about the value of the species, the value of the civilization. What is the value of even being a human being here? And I notice that there is an interdimensional value, and you can consider that your inner realms, who you are in front of your own eyes. Then I consider who you are in front of the world's eyes. When I say the world's eyes, I don't mean people. I mean literally the world. It's kind of like a writer looking at an empty piece of paper and wondering what the purpose of writing words is, what the purpose of what sentence the life's purpose is. It is really how your attention moves. It is really what is important for you. And it's the discovery of the mind. That means the inner realms is kind of your personal life, the outer realms is where your impersonal life happens. And so I feel that most people, they are not conscious that they can in some sense experience a collective archetype, and there is no greater route than novelty. The new is way more valuable than anything. For me, a child playing a new song on an instrument is much more incredible than a child in some sense just being playing something as it was. Our ears need to hear the new, our eyes need to see the new, our hearts need to, in some sense, feel that this world can move in different ways. That's evolution, really. That means if we were technically to evolve now, we would not identify with anything we're seeing right now. I feel the third evolution is going to be a cyber evolution. It's going to be cyberspace. It's going to pretty much be when we connect ourselves. It's going to be the fruition of epigenetics in regards to the intellect. The ultimate integration of man with what is outside of himself. Right now, there's a separation. Right now, your body and the earth are not connected. I mean, physically, you're not like a tree rooted in the soil. You have limbs. You move on the earth. Because we move on the earth, we have an experience as if we're separate from the earth. Do you see? And for a long time, when you look at all the animal species on this planet, you know, we started to define our environment. Usually, the environment defines the person. The most naive decision is usually tends to be something that's just unthought of, kind of like, you know, response to the moment. For me, there was something incredible that actually it came to me from religion. In religion, there's this sentence where in the Quran it says, like, what do you call it? It's so, guys. My background is Persian, and I was raised in a theocratical society, and there they entertain Shia Islam. And in the Quran, there's this saying that God has given you intelligence, so you use it, right? And so many people here ask for pray to God first before using your intelligence. But what does using your intelligence really mean? If you look at it from a religious angle, listening to the divine will. If you look at it from the secular angle, it will be the evolution of the free will. You see, our issue is we're trying to understand a higher dimensional phenomenon with the language that was born in this dimension. I feel we have to move on to a geometrical acknowledgement of intelligence. I really feel geometry is going to be like, I don't know, like right now I communicate to you with you through words. Certain sages, they communicated with nature through their presence. Then there's some people who communicate with the inanimate through geometry. Geometry is in some sense kind of like a shapes evolutionary potential, dynamic geometry. Anyways, whatever the story is, we find ourselves here. We find ourselves acknowledging a sense of self. Everybody right now, you ask them, who are you? They'll give you an answer. But when you really look at where that self is not in reality. Literally, I am kind of baffled. There's certain things about the scientific modality that I kind of wonder about, And it's not per se science. Science is just a method. It's really this militant atheism, that in some sense has the banner of modernity, but after any point you can see the paradox in a changing system. What does that mean? That means it's like kind of like, you don't know how many how many times on YouTube I've seen these atheists it's destroy these theists in debate, and I've always been waiting for the theists to say one thing, and they never do. And what it is because the theist doesn't think. The theist, even if it thinks, it's in the domain of the belief. See, for me it was strange. It's kind of like we have neurologists who are also simultaneously militant atheists or spiritual atheists. I don't know how the view is now. But I'm telling you, it's spiritual atheism. It's like hilarious, probably. It's probably nothing and everything, I feel like this, guys, that the issue is that if the moment we deny the inner realms of the other, we can't accept our own. So I was for a second thinking every atheist, and I use that term just because I honor these words. I tend to speak about what I, in some sense, honor, but in the context that my eyes have opened up to it. And the way I see it is that the atheist is telling the theist, it's all man-made, and then at the same time, the atheist concludes that free will is an illusion. Have you noticed that? That means, I was like, technically, that means there's no atheist to deny a theist. That means that if free will is an illusion, atheism doesn't exist. So it's like the one doubting the the reality is in some sense kind of not existing. So I'm telling you, here's the thing: either in your perception, dimensions, the dimensions. I don't know what the term should be. The dimensions grow. They something new arises from them, or in some sense they reduce. But the mind is strange. Have you noticed the body? It reaches a peak of potential, then it goes down the mountain. It climbs down the mountain. We can't say that there is reality but think free will is an illusion. Because then, to who is there reality? On some level, I think it's a 50-50. I think literally we have two eyes that see the same. I think we're two dimensions in two dimensions that appear at the same moment. There is the physical phenomenology, and I feel there is this more of a subtler where I consider it not as some aura. I don't have the view of auras. For me, it's like you don't have. Let me tell you what it is. It's like you could have endless bodies in your inner realms, but until you realize the true being is space. So I feel that it might be strange. Sometimes I've looked at life and I'm like, life, what will your final teaching be? Will it be that I will stare at emptiness? Will it be that I will stare at fullness? Will it be that I will stare at the unknown? And I feel that the unknown is the destination. That means whatever I do in this life, at the end, it is still unknown. So man has to, in some sense, confront the unknown. And you confront it early on, you get to see way more of life. So what does that mean? That means we're oscillating from nowhere, between nowhere and now here. We're oscillating between thinking our inner realms are giving meaning and thinking the outer realms are giving the inner realms meaning. I feel the same way we have two eyes again that see the same. The mind is projecting the body is projecting the mind. So in the outer realms, your body is moving your mind. In your inner realms, your mind is moving in the form of the view of a body, the subjective counter existence of the body. Parallel existence of the body, subjective parallel existence. Okay, so guys, I think this was probably on mute and I was just talking. But anyways, Jake in the chat section asks, "What's your conception on free will? What's your conception of free will?" Here's the thing: the will implements itself through shape. Freedom doesn't have a shape. So for me, the free will is the endless ability of the individualness to move. So right now, how I see myself as a creature, I have free will to move in three-dimensional space, right? Most people don't know it. You have you have ability to also move as a fifth-dimensional witness of the fourth-dimensional view. What that means is what separates two times from one another is emptiness, is space. I'm telling you, it's like this. It's like you are wondering what life is, you notice language, and then you notice the stretching of language, which is metaphysics. Okay, the extensions of the possibility of individual relationships that the mind can fathom. That means it's kind of strange, you know. A person can have someone tell them, for example, don't do this, you know, it's like don't, you know, don't be late or something. Or they could suddenly in their dream state have some fictional character come and tell them don't be late, but still when they are in reality the don't be late is there regardless of from whatever outlet of archetype it came in. So for me, it's kind of wondering that before you were a character in a story, how was life like designed? So we kind of see that it's this unknown space that gives us an ability to be a self. So I feel that this is why when you notice somebody talking and suddenly they're interrupted, that person has to start over. Why? Because their speech is creating a space in accordance to a flow or a rhythm. I mean, Jake, when you say in the chat section, when you say Alan Watts says man has free will to the extent he knows what he really is, I mean, man can just be a sort of being before he's any idea, right? So I'm telling you, a lot of things that relate to a person in certain states of mind may not relate. I don't know how to say it. Here's the thing: the free will. This is my view on free will. This is the issue. If there was no human body or individual existence, if there was no creature, we would literally not even have the concept. So we can automatically say free will is conditional, you know. So that means it's like when you're a creature, then you can move as a creature. Then we ask the question of free will, you know. So for me, it's kind of like free will is in some strange way is conditionally there. That means it's like you're the way you feel you're a person. It's a certain state, and when this state changes, the way the intelligence person again sees the person, the moment shifts. So you on some level can be a person with an ideological belief system, kind of put one picture on your face and run in an obstacle course with a picture on your face with a blindfold, or you can look at the experiential dimensions of life. Because what are teachings? What is any teaching? Why do people go to school? You know, because a certain experience is shared, is projected. True education is opening your eyes and realizing you gotta open your eyes, you know? So many things that people wait for to change in their life, they're sitting on a chair waiting for someone to lift them up, not realizing you can get up. You can change direction, literally. You can pilot your attention in this life, you know? For me, the most remarkable energy source is what is important to me. I've noticed that when I've gone towards what's important to me, it's like that's where the meaning was acceptable. It's like what's important to you, you on some levels trust. You know, this is my question. I feel that we, as a species, don't actually know anything. I feel we are hovering in our linguistic simulation, and I think we should start becoming dependent on the value of communication originating from the, you know, in some sense, the experience that brings image. So if I ask you right now, who are you? Let's say you give an answer. Let's say I ask you again, who are you? You give another answer. And let's say every day somebody comes and asks you, who are you? And after some point, you'll be like, there's no way I'm all these views on myself. So you kind of see that it's like you're not a day's life. You are as far as you endured and to what direction, you know? Why is existence existing? It's a question that instantly takes you from a realm of trying to see the relationship of movement, but to see the relationship of stillness. The thing about stillness is that it's instantaneous, you know? I kind of feel maybe this is kind of a safe way the species can look at it. We are existing in our own minds, and we're existing in the mind of the cosmos. If we think it's the mind of the cosmos, we don't deny intelligence to the unknown. We don't deny the multidimensional. You know, it's kind of like wondering if all the teachers in the world gave you their teachings and you suddenly had access to all the books and information in the world, what will you do next? You see, it will inevitably come down to the unknown. And I think the strength of being able to meditate on the unknown, to have a single pointed attention to how attention is an instantaneous phenomenon. Do you have to think about your energy to be energy? No, energy is just being. So when we say we're a human being, we're first being something, then there's the human display. So technically, we are as eternal as existence is around. For me, sometimes I wondered, what is death? Technically, our physical body is changing. That means, like, I'm not who I don't physically look like who I was like 20 years ago. You know, I don't have the same views. So, does that mean who I was back then is gone, is dead? Do you see what I'm saying? It's kind of like sometimes I wonder, how can the human being, how can you judge a growing system? That's the question. How can you linearize a growing system? Pretty much man's, pretty much humanity's knowledge is like is a teacup, and the unknown is like this unending waterfall, this endless waterfall. So that means we only have to either expand the container, either experience the waterfall beyond the container, or create more containers and integrate them. What does that mean? That means there's more unknown than known. That means it's like, here's the thing. Imagine someone judges you. Literally, someone says something to you. And you just ask them, why did you say that? And the guy insults you again. And then you say, why? Why are you insulting me? And you inevitably get down to a reason of an assumption. Do you see? It's not that technically you need to have faith in faith for the definition to exist for you. You need to have faith in the alphabet to be able to speak. But it doesn't mean a faith that's just so one-sided that you never see the other side until you're out of here. Like I'm telling you, you can realize you can enter heaven as an object, as a subject, or you can be it. You can be it. You can be before you do. And that's really the observant mind, because on some level, all psychology comes down to the one looking, the observer, the one looking throughout your eyes, and the objects of observance and the subjects of observance. And what's superior subject is an image. Okay, so that means all these words that I'm telling you, it's kind of like there's images behind them. I think that we have so much free will that we feel we don't have it. And the idea can be made the other way, where it's kind of like we have no choice other than to have free will. But really what it is you open your eyes, there's a landscape that's objective, there's a landscape that's subjective, you're witnessing both of them as just the presence. And this presence throughout the day implements effort in accordance to its own command. That means your subconscious mind is how you are actually being all your desires simultaneously. There's a saying that was in the Diamond Sutra, I believe it was something like the Buddha enters the forest not moving a single straw of grass, as if like he enters the forest as if he was never there. And I was like, what is this? What is this? You find it in Taoism, you find it in various Zen, you find it in various mystical traditions, that the mystic wanted to become uh, transparent, wanted to fade, wanted to evaporate from the story of the world. Actually, evaporation is a great metaphor for mysticism, guys, because usually the mystic, think about it, once they surrender the individualism, they are, where can they be left? That means without the idea of you, is there a you? That's the question. And I walk in a school of thought where I've realized what the real self is a simultaneous witness of space and matter. You're not just seeing matter, there's space, but this space I feel it is literally like we're fish under an ocean, and sometimes a fish can go in a current, and that's what it means to be in the zone. That's what it means to follow your importance. You know, sometimes life is something where people feel the world sees their eyes, sees them, but the world can't see you because, in some sense, it doesn't have time. And let me tell you what I mean by that. That means our civilization needs certain basic updates that we just literally, just like your computer, you install the updates, then you restart. So we need to not only first download the updates, do the updates, and then restart civilization. We need to do all these and then experience that more advanced civilization that I speak of. That means really we kind of found a freedom. We found a freedom with our outer realms. In our outer realms, we found a freedom of mobility. But in our inner realms, we still don't have a freedom of from identification with. Anyways, from nowhere to now here, there's a dimension that when we wake up, there is unknown variables to the moment, and there's known variables to the moment. The known variables you can linearly engage or non-linearly engage. You can simplify or make them have complex. That's your style. I don't know how to tell you guys. I feel every person's mind is like a unique instrument, their DNA, and every person has to attempt for themselves to master this instrument. And there is really no other teacher when you are wondering about eyes that only you can see through. That means when you realize nobody has your eyes, you can't blame anyone for what happens to you. You know what I mean? On some level you can't because it's your eyes, your decisions, right? So your alertness goes on high. But I'm saying at the same time, I don't know what it is. Ultimately, everything moves towards trusting the moment for it to evolve. You know, it could be like right now, civilization is slow. If I was born, I don't know, let's say 3,600 years from now, I might be kind of telling people like on like Sky Cities in Phase 3 of Civilization 2.0. if civilization was too moving too fast, you would move. I would be preaching slow. That means like literally, if I was alive in ancient Greece, I might, in some sense, kind of be telling people like, "Yo, you know, uh, where do the gods buy shoes from?" You know, like it's like what kind of shoes, can walk on clouds. I'm just trying to suggest that it's just about what the world has accepted, and then you open your eyes, and your eyes goes on its own journey and becomes its own snowball effect of all the experiences and values and everything you process, and eventually, I'm telling you, you come to the steering wheel. There's no truth, guys. It's a steering wheel. The truth is a steering wheel. The truth of this dimension is that it's not ideological, it's not just objective, it's not just subjective, it's navigation through awareness. Right now, self is moving, and we're like, yo, why aren't we aware? But if we were aware and then the self moved, we'd never ask that question. When I looked at philosophy, I was like, wow. There's really two ways you can go. You either go through the gate of the question, or you reverse engineer and you go towards the question. Rene Descartes says, like he has this quote where he says, in your life, his approach was this methodical doubt, and he was pretty much this guy who was like, I'm going to doubt everything, and see what truth is. So he was trying to use doubt as a filter for the ultimate truth, and he was doubting everything. And then he realized he couldn't doubt the questioner. He couldn't doubt the one asking the question, which Rene Descartes called it, in some sense, the isolated thinking subject. Now Hegel, this German philosophers are epic. They're always talking to each other like timelessly. That's the cool thing about philosophy. Science is kind of studying what's in the sight. Philosophy is studying the implication of what's in the sight. I kind of feel sometimes uh, like the manner of speech is usually beginning, middle, end, beginning, middle, end, beginning, middle, end. But I've noticed that there's parallels. It's kind of like sometimes this is like the way I kind of naturally started writing books was that I would write a page for every book every day. So I would finish like in very short periods of time multiple books. But the thing was that after some point, it wasn't about writing a book for an audience. That philosophy became incredibly silly to me. I realized my audience was the history of how far human existence has gone. That's it. That means that's the ultimate entertainment, guys. Something real happening, something real advancing. Can you imagine waking up to a civilization where you wouldn't be like, gosh, you know, I'm gonna get through this, I'm gonna go into the trenches again, or battlefield trenches, or imagine a civilization where you can't wait to get up in the morning. You can't wait because it's a collective advancement. Do you know what it is? Most people, I've noticed communication sometimes, I like this analogy that somebody said, it's like a ball. So imagine you're playing catch You're throwing a ball at someone, they're throwing it back at you, and it's kind of like when it comes to speech, there is that thing, right? There is like you could literally throw the ball at the person, and then you kind of silence your reality. The ripples on your pond settle, and then the ripples on the pond of the other person begin. And when the ripples on the pond of the other person have settled, the ripples on your pond begin. That means sometimes I've spoken just to various people in my life, even family members, and it's something that I'm still learning. Sometimes I would say the thing is that I've kind of had some lessons on impatience, but the thing is that the decency of your simplicity, like on some level we're all just creatures getting by. But at the same time, we have an opportunity to attempt an advanced civilization. And I thought about it, what would that mean? What would that mean to have a collective update? I realized it would mean it has to be an update in all physical existence, and it has to be an update in all subjective existence, the inner realms. So that means an advanced civilization right now will not be any value system that we hold now. It's kind of like an incredible situation where on a sphere in a vacuum, 8 billion points of sight have arose, and they're wondering why. Remember, it's a sphere on a vacuum, in a vacuum, in an empty space. Back in the day, um, there was a certain level of honor for skill, and skill was honored throughout performance. Now, what would that mean? That would mean there would be these martial artists or warriors in the battle, these swordsmen, these imagine two great warriors fighting, and then these warriors, of course, it's war. You got to kill the guy before the guy kills you. I mean, it's a messed up situation from the beginning, but it's a situation where the one who sees more into the moment wins. So it becomes a display of mind. So a person's physical skill is actually simultaneously a display of how their inner realms are being conducted. Now, the inner realms, once you realize they're evocational, what does that mean? That means, do you think imagination is just like I want a thought and it comes there? Imagination is literally like you gotta treat it as if emptiness is a canvas, and every image, thought, shape, whatever, tiny movement from that emptiness that arises in that emptiness, you notice it. Guys, you might not believe it, but sometimes I can see how people's inner realms pull them. That means when you're speaking to someone where their attention is not there, or you see a friend, like sometimes the silence of someone speaks much louder than their words. There was a time when I was younger, I'd gotten into you know, some situation that I shouldn't have gotten into, and I somehow miraculously it worked out, and I came home, but I was silent. And the moment my brother kind of saw my silence, my twin brother, I have a twin brother, the moment he saw my silence, he knew. He exactly knew what had happened. It was as if, like, just a subtle behavioral shift, and something is off. And I gotta say, it's not enough you know how they say just work hard? There's some schools of thought that say, hey man, you gotta work smart before you work hard, you know? And so what does that mean? That means you gotta know it's kind of like you got to know the right site for the moment. And I have found that it's like anytime you can't attain it through complexity, you gotta let the moment become simpler. And you might not believe, but when there's this, I don't know, I call it the zero dimension, but literally it's a state of no value, nothing. You're just sight as moment. You're just energy conscious of itself. When you are that, there is this authorization that automatically comes from the inner realms. That means once you finish living this life you have desires for, you come to this great silence where there's no longer an individual life left to live. So then what are you? You are your whole moment. So what does that mean? That means, again, the individual life, instead of you living it as a part of your moment, it is your whole moment. So it becomes the inseparability, as Swami Krishnananda says. This is when meditation truly no longer is needed for the person, because they have noticed the inseparability of all the individually contained phenomenology with the collective activity. When you realize your siblings are beyond the clouds, glowing at night, and you can see them. In some sense, we are creatures of light, are we not? That means, sure, on some level, yes, I do identify with this biology, but the only way I have access to this biology is through the visual sensory perception of light, right? That's what I see. So I'm telling you, it's as if like the mind is solar powered, and if the soul is something beyond the mind, this idea of the unknown, um, inconceivable dimension beyond the mind, that beyond the edge of the mind. You finish living your individual life, and after you live your individual life, your collective life begins. Your collective life is not based on an individual value system, it's based on how you observe the moment and how much you abide by the decency of humanity. You see, it's like the mind, if you really look at what memories are, there are various angles. There are angles. Like sometimes when I remember something, I can pinpoint the camera angle of that memory. Sometimes I'd remember the memory, but from an angle that I didn't have access to. That's why I'm telling you, we are our whole moment. There is no greater soul than this. It's just the inseparability of your mind and your moment. When you become content with the unknown, you give your mind freedom, and the mind's like, whoa, did this guy just give me freedom? And your mind becomes free, like Neo from the Matrix. Guys, I need a quick couple minute breather. Let's make it 5 minutes. I'm gonna assume the engaged listeners are like, all right, in 5 minutes we're all gonna be back. Okay. So, all right, guys, I'll be back. Okay, guys. From nowhere to now here. From nowhere to now here. That means from the meaningless to meaning. Now, meaning, because we're temporary and biological, that means meaning will go back to nowhere. So, what does that mean? That means because we're temporary, we're just experiencing. So now, so what the view now here means is that it's the space between two nowheres, two different, one emergence from nowhere. I mean, think about it. It's like you exist, you're born, so that means it was like a start. It was an ignition. There was something that was emerged, right? And then you go on through this life changing and doing it, all this stuff, and then what is it? You return. So there is literally like a push, and then by time you're pulled back into nature, into the elemental realms, into the observation of the elemental realms, of course. Right? So that's the thing. It's not that there's ever meaning. It's oscillating from the meaningless is like it's two sides of a coin, but we're standing somewhere and we're flipping this coin in the air, and every time we see one of its sides, it's like I don't know how to tell you. Imagine if we made that slow motion video of the coin flip slow motion, we would see its sides. Each side, how do I say it? It's like one moment you are remembering a memory from your past, and then there's a moment where you realize you are becoming the memory of your future. I feel that behind our eyes, the same relationship we find of being a creature living in life, I feel we're echoing it as our mind. I think it's like a intelligence, it's like a pattern access, then constant. I mean, when you look at cells on a very fundamental level, biological cells, of an organism, the cell replicates, right? So it's in our nature to imprint ourselves upon the world, right? It's been there, right? The cells, in some sense, emerge out of one another. Sorry, not emerge out of one another, but in some sense, I'm saying, in some sense, like your body, your physical body right now, is literally the incredible complex orchestration and maintenance of physical reality, of your physical, of like it's like this, a lot of incredible, the medical sciences, it just blows you away with how much intelligent activity is occurring inside your human body. You know, the waves of time wash away everything. Whatever direction man looks, he will go towards the inconceivable. If we want to go towards infinite speed, infinite advancement, its full end is inconceivable. And when we go in some sense towards the void, it's inconceivable. It's really like asking the question, what do we do when there's a lot of emptiness here? And aside from creative activity and maintenance projects and decent exits, I don't know what we can do. I feel actually the species is bored. It's not that we're all like careless human beings, it's just that the species is bored. It has lived too long as the same image inside it. It has inhabited this same, thought structure, the same ideological structures for too long. There's moments where you just gotta let go of things. It's kind of like you have two abilities in this life. You can hold things and then you can let go. You know, you can hold people close to you or you can let go. You know, and some people are savage. Some people are savage where they kind of don't do anything just to see how the moment moves. I consider that a level of savageness, but it's savage purity. It's letting the world move before you do. So then there is always a pattern to the intelligence. I just feel we're moving beyond closer towards the language threshold. What does that mean? That means we are not only becoming, not only did we become aware of our body, that we're a physical body, but we also became aware. We became aware that this physical body is being orchestrated through the image of a self, and the self is not even in physical reality. That means that's the mystery. We can run as many experiments you want on what's in front of our eyes, but behind our eyes, we are the only solo explorer. You are the only pilot of your inner realms, really. And when you realize that, I personally consider this would take one closer towards the pure lens of the bodhisattvic mind. And what does that mean? That means usually people feel the change is destruction. But you gotta kind of think of it this way, that destruction, after eons, wanted to be something else. It's all behaviors. It's kind of like in Vedanta, they say it's Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Shiva is the archetype, at least the way I perceive it, Mr.Within perceives it. Shiva is in some sense the archetype of, it's pretty much how, imagine the world had three simultaneous dimensions instead of three phases. It had three simultaneous dimensions, and you were traveling through these dimensions. That means instead of us thinking that it's like one journey with a bit of beginning, middle, end. Let's say the beginning was its own dimension, the middle was its own dimension, the end was its own dimension. It was just that something is moving through these, something is traveling through experience. We are experience travelers. We travel through not just as an object, but how this object relates and how there is an intelligence here. And I can't emphasize this point, but isn't it super strange that we are incredibly more superior than all the other species on this planet? Literally all the other animals are like, you guys are aliens. And we're like, are we aliens? And the animal's like, yeah, but you don't understand this because we're animals. So I'm just saying, yeah, it's like man's nature is different because it's a mind field. I feel that when a person, why was love so boldly highlighted in all these texts towards goodness? Do you know what I mean? Why is love so important? Because love meant you care for what's there. That's it. And then that care can develop into more things, you know? Trust me, a person can fall in love with people, a person can fall in love with an object, a person can fall in love with a subject, you know, and also a person can also fall in love with an advanced civilization. You can fall in love with your future too. But the whole idea is that after some point, it's just attention left in the moment. And that's the cool thing. People, it's kind of like they don't understand the value of being something in somewhere where there's so much nothing, so much unknown, you know. Not that the unknown is nothing, but it's definitely not a thing. It's because things are known. We know what matter looks like. It's like we saw matter and the philosopher was like, next! Oh man. Guys, it's an incredible time. It's such an incredible time because so many mysteries are infusing through the answers that we're becoming. What does that mean? Right now, there's certain veils I consider them. One veil is the mysterious veil of how neurology, the movement of neurons, is in some sense being ascribed to personality. That's a mystery that many philosophers can run towards. The other mystery is how emptiness can, it's another veil. It's like how emptiness can exist when you are a creature that exists. How can you experience non-existence when you exist, right? That you can experience experiential non-existence, like your experience doesn't exist, but the existence exists. That means technically, even science is telling you, the atoms, the atoms that make up who you are now. This is ancient stardust. Do you know what that means? That means atoms are immortal. that's that's kind of like I think that's one of the most incredible things I've ever said. Atoms are immortal. But is anything ever really? I mean, guys, I mean, I see more eternal definitions in science than in spirituality, guys. Energy can't be created or destroyed. It's literally like, you know, so you kidding me? You saying the universe began, but you tell me energy can't be created or destroyed? You say there was a Big Bang theory, the universe had a beginning, but energy can't be created or destroyed? This is like mind-boggling. Sometimes it's you open, like, let me tell you, science is incredible, but it needs to have, um, it needs to have inspiration. The way I see science is like, you know, let me say, I think the most influential scientist in history, I personally feel, is Neil deGrasse Tyson. Because science is a technology, it's a view, it's an approach, it's a method. Now, methods are like technologies. They are like rare opportunities of access. Okay? And so the biggest issue is, in some sense, bringing people towards a bigger picture of the cosmos. People think we're too defined. They accept the definitions too easily. It's kind of like an example. Imagine person A is in the park. Person B comes to person A and says, "Hey, person A, you know, you're like person, you know, it's like you're nothing." Insults person A. He says you're nonsense. Person B, person B comes to person A and says you're nonsense. Now person A can instantly say, he said I'm nonsense. I'm nonsense. No, I'm not nonsense. Could literally have that approach. Or in some sense, person A can just watch. Can just watch how people in some sense think they know their world. Person A would have the ability to notice that person B has an inner realms. Person B's inner realms differs, like literally, it's like person A should, in some sense, I don't know how to say it to you, but it's like When you realize language can't make you bleed, you will stop the invisible wars. That in some sense, anger was the host that literally needed to go, was a guest in the house of the host that needed to go wash its face and relax. You know? Guys, this is Mr. Within's playful advice for a sort of instant kind of fire extinguisher like couples therapy for couples getting angry fights. Instantly, when the fight is super intense and angry, either go with the flow, commit to the fight, or if you don't like the anger, literally both of you lie down on the ground with your backs on the ground staring at the ceiling and talk the conversation out like that. When someone lies down on the ground, they don't feel like getting up. Gravity literally is helping you not get angry when you literally lie down. You know, so I'm telling you so much. I will tell you, this is like, if there was, I will tell you, I think relationships would succeed if minds were introduced first, then how would you say it? A sort of physical allure. And this doesn't mean, in some sense, that we should be a species that aims for the highest, because we only got the stage once, you know. The same way I feel like I can only give these talks one, like, oh, if I don't make an effort, they won't exist. So it's like, it's kind of like that. The stage every day is, you know, some people look at the sands of the hourglass and they're like, oh no. And there's some people who look at the sands of the hourglass and those sands are a stage. Imagine, guys, something many people didn't notice. Imagine from that hourglass of time, ultimate archetype of time, where time is, every moment is ticking and every sand is falling. Imagine there was someone who was trying to climb up and he was jumping on every sand, you know? This endless climb towards an ultimate destination that needs no climber. It's kind of like, what do you do when you get to the peak of the mountain? You have to find a method beyond your feet. That means it's like when you can't walk anymore, or when you can't climb anymore, any higher, fly. When you reach a certain state of content, implement. You see, I thought about it. Why is it like I thought about it? Okay, so you see these Shaolin monks in these Shaolin monk schools, and they're kind of like constantly practicing these martial art techniques and katas and whatnot, right? So I was like, wait a minute. So you telling me this monk is practicing this same thing every day, and technically my mind has been practicing existing every day? I saw my whole moment as the ultimate presence of my art. It's kind of like finding out your free moment of being before what's in the moment needs to be free. It's kind of that difference. It's a sort of realizing the ideological landscape is kind of like weather, is it not? That means technically, if every person wrote down all their thoughts every day, that every person would be like some next level author, because so many thoughts come and go. So, anyways, guys, really, there isn't much I could say about nowhere, and there isn't much I need to say about what's now here. It's all accessible. I think what's really left is how the from the nowhere we kind of emerged. and in some sense how nowhere becomes the now here, which I feel I've explained, but like, I mean, nowhere and now here. I mean, look at the word nowhere. I mean, even though it's now here, it's also like nowhere. There is nowhere. There's no location. So nowhere is non-local view of the moment. Now here is the local view. So what does that mean? That means from a non-local state of mind, we came into a local state of mind, state of existence. So our body, our known, everything we know is in some sense the known is one side of the coin again, and the nowhere is the other. What does that mean? That means everything I see a value in it, literally this cup, everything, I name, memories, everything I see a value. There is no value before I look at it. Do you see? We are such creatures of attention. It's fascinating. So, anyways, guys, I would say this is the end of the talk. Um, Let me check the subtitle. Let's see what else is there. Why the spark of existence? I don't know. I think existence was sparked because the experiencer was cold. Needed a fire to get going. Guys, can you imagine we created an origin myth that life, the universe began when like some inconceivable force turned on a light switch? What I'm saying is philosophy sees the design of the concept, the mean, and inevitably the more closer to design you go, the less ideological, the less symbolism you need, the more you when you're experiencing the phenomenon. It's like that moment that person's swimming, the moment they're like in that exact moment that they're swimming, they don't need to, for example, Google what swimming is. They're in the experience. So when you're in the experience, when you're active, you don't need the ideology. Because the experience is, your attention is moving through the experiential dimension. Pretty much, it's kind of like either, again, the self is multidimensional, the world is multidimensional, the self is multidimensional, the world isn't multidimensional, the self is multidimensional, the world is multidimensional, the self is multidimensional, the world is singular. So I'm telling you, there's these various variations of how human beings are identifying with what they don't know and what they know. The mystic was more interested in what the mystic was looking for an experience. Wanted to see what is it that's happening that I'm not seeing about this picture of truth. This moment I'm alive in. So you can say mystics were trying to unravel the hidden meaning of existence, experientially. Language is like wearing sunglasses and trying to teach science to kids and kind of being like, why aren't they inspired? Because the words are not enough. I think literally people learn through images, right? They say an image is better than 1,000 words. So I think we don't need teachers to teach the past anymore. I think the film industry is going to come and pretty much in educational system, there's a huge potential. It might become like a cinema in the future. Because the video on the idea could be made. That means imagine the educational system started paying all filmmakers and directors to come and make all the whole curriculum into a film. And then one kid saw that film and suddenly realized what it was all about. I feel like there's so many ways this whole system's gonna move. It's pretty much gonna engage in a way where either the new will be so fascinating you can't suffer from the past, or your past becomes liberated by your future, or your past becomes nullified by your future. The idea is while we're alive, we should aim high. We should look for not just an advanced external outer realm interstellar civilization, but an inner realm kind of incredibly advanced creature that can literally, like a camera, zoom in and zoom out. What does that mean? That means you can concentrate on the singular. You can confront the space. You can recognize the dualistic nature of all the linguistic simulation. You can suddenly move at infinite speeds, but at those speeds, you're not a self. You're a rhythm. You're a field. You're moving in the mind field as a mind wave. It's literally, imagine your brain is giving off waves right now, and so some of these waves externalize as your actions and physical movements, but some of these waves don't externalize as your biology. They externalize as the subjective, the witness's reaction to the subject, if I can say that. So, anyways, guys, this is the end of the talk. I'm gonna open up Q&A for 10 minutes. Anybody who wants to speak or has a question or comment or wants to share something, feel free to do so. I'm pretty much gonna tune out of cyberspace, but anyone has a question, I'll come back. And for anyone who's listened so far, thanks for tuning in. So Q&A, 10 minutes. Let's do this, guys. Okay, I want to thank everyone for listening. Beyond the language threshold, it is kind of like your responsibility to move on the empty page. Sometimes you got to be aware of space and then move. So your relationship with your mind could be an observation or a reevaluation of what even space means to you. So from nowhere to now here, that nowhere and now here could both be in some sense, uh, there could be an inconceivable witness. There could be a third, endless regression of a third witness. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Much blessings and awesome.